As the winds blow across the desert plains and the sands shift and change, it becomes a game of dexterity and cunning for the wildlife in Sonora. Joining us again at Tantrum House Studio 3. I'm Will Meadows.
And I'm Sara Meadows, and today we're reviewing the game Sonora from Pandasaurus Games. This is from designer Rob Newton, and art is from Tom Goyen.
This is a 1 to 4 player flick and write game that takes about 20 to 45 minutes to play. Pandasaurus was kind enough to send us a preview copy to check out, so let's take a look at how it's played.
To set up the game, give each player their dry erase sheet, marker, and colored discs, and you're ready to begin.
During the flick phase, players will take turns flicking 2 of the numbered discs of their choice into the center of the board.
And then they will continue flicking their discs until everyone has flicked them all.
If a player manages to land in the very center wild space, they retrieve the disc and place it anywhere on their own board to score that area.
Next is the right phase, and the cliff dweller area is scored first.
Players will total the number of their discs in the area and any bonus lizard spaces, and the player with the highest total will mark off that many spaces in the cliff dweller location on their board.
The first player will claim their rewards, and then the next players follow.
Each value of disc in the canyon area corresponds to a shape that will be filled in.
Anytime a cacti or a bonus is marked, the player will score that type.
In the riverbed area, players will follow the streams, marking off spaces and collecting the reward at the end of their path.
And in the mud cracks area, players will connect the dots in order to outline the triangle spaces and score points.
Once everyone has scored each of their discs, the first player token is passed, the board is rotated clockwise, and the next round begins.
After 6 rounds, points are tallied, and the player with the most points wins.
We've seen all kinds of variations incorporated into this roll and write game space, and Sonora is doing it yet again by introducing a dexterity component, which is pretty clever. You've still got a lot of the random and having to respond to the randomness that you would have with a dice game, but in this game you maybe can mitigate that a little bit if you're a good aim. You probably have more mitigation over that and a smaller player count. Once you get a huge player count, it's crazy random. But in the game, like in any good roll and write, you're gonna have a lot of opportunities on your board to make the best decisions from what you've been dealt for the round.
Yes, and in that, there is only one area that you are facing off against other players. It's that cliff dweller area with the lizard. You will total up the points, the value, the sum of those discs in that area, and then there's a couple bonus spaces also, other places on the board that you'll add in as well. And whoever has the highest will get to mark off first, and those spaces have little areas that if you fill in all 13 of this, you'll gain 18 points or whatever the areas are. First come, first serve. If you aren't the first one, you can still score, but it's not as much. And so that race mechanism on that area is very different from the rest of the board. The rest of the board is all played individually, and there's the other 3 areas. 2 of them will score each disc individually, and then that mud cracks area, you'll total them up and divide it out however you would like.
Right, so you got 4 very different ways that you can try to score each round. I think they're obviously probably, for the most part, very balanced. You could score just as many section points in the bottom right as you could in the top right, depending on how you dedicate your discs. The numbered discs is, I think, probably the best part of this game, because you can kind of say, well, I want to try to beat some people in the top left, so I'm going to flick my 5 and my 3 over there. Oh, look, if I just get a 2 in this riverbed area, then I'm going to be able to collect the 6-pointer, and so you can try to be really strategic. The problem is one guy comes in and flicks it as hard as he can, and it knocks all the discs everywhere, and then, okay, now like in any good roll and write, you're just kind of left to deal with the aftermath and then make sure you're scoring the points in the best ways that you possibly can.
Yes, there are several different strategies because there are those 4 areas. You can kind of focus on 1 or 2. You can also try and, focusing on 1 and 2 is probably a better strategy, and it can be different ones each time you play. But each of those, the farther along you get in that area, you can garner more bonuses that will chain. Chaining bonuses is something that is very enjoyable to do in roll and writes, and this one definitely has that as well.
Now, one of the strategies I haven't tried and I think could be really effective is in the very dead center of the board is that wild space. If you could flick and hit that wild space every time and pick where you want to put your people, that would be interesting. Once one disc falls in there, you immediately pull it out and save it on your board. So you could do it over and over and over.
I did try that one.
If you were really good at it.
I have tried that
I'm not really
strategy.
good at it.
I was able to get it a few times.
Yeah.
There were a lot of times where I hit a little too hard and it bounced right out and knocked somebody else out of where they were hoping to be. So, you know, it worked out okay
right.
in the end.
It would be the case where it is a true dexterity game, because if you were good at that part of it, you would have a lot of freedom in the game.
Yes. Otherwise, you are left with what you're given for the round and try and do your best to score. Some of those areas do have a definite strategy inside of the area. I know the one, it kind of looks like a crossword puzzle almost, where you're filling in spaces. That one piece of information we didn't give you when we explained the game is that if you have a 5, you can fill in this space, and it's 5 little squares, but it's a very specific shape. If that shape doesn't really match with anything where you're trying to get specific things, you are allowed to pick a smaller shape down the line for one of the other numbers. So that highest is only attainable if you use that one disc, but you may be able to gain a couple more items that you can cross off and get points for those if you use a different shape.
I really appreciated the color scheme of the game. I thought it looked great on the table, in the box, everywhere else. Very consistent, really beautiful. It felt, a lot of roll and write games end up being, you know, a black and white sheet of paper and some dice, and so I thought this one did a great job of bringing in a fun theme and then incorporating it in fun ways. You've got that riverbed that's all snaky, and you've got the sharp angles of the broken clay dry area. So I felt like they did some fun stuff for, you know, for a game that's really an abstract strategy game. They did some fun stuff bringing in some really great theme incorporation.
Yeah, and each area also has an animal that corresponds to it, and it actually fits in with real life a little bit. It's got the riverbed with an owl flying overhead, and you see lots of little rabbits in that area that are bonuses. That's kind of interesting that they tried to incorporate that as well.
Yep, I thought they did a great job. If it looks like something you would be interested in, if you enjoy roll and writes, if you're looking for something with some great table presence, definitely check out Sonora from Pandasaurus Games. And then, as always, thanks so much for checking out our stuff, liking, subscribing, and following along here at Tantrum House.
It's from designer Rob Newton, and art is from something Goyen. Tom.
Another person.
Tom.
During the flick phase, players will take turns. Oh my gosh.
Similar to dice, there are those 5 choices. Dice would probably have 6. That was dumb.
Probably have 6. They might only have 5. It does kind of give you an opportunity to kind of, whatever the word is, aim